Welcome, I'm Max Horowitz, producer and host of Penderecki in Memoriam Podcast. This podcast is created by Anna Pejanowska and presented by Polish Cultural Institute, New York. Penderecki in Memoriam Podcast unveils a multifaceted portrait of Krzysztof Penderecki with commentary from musicians, colleagues, radio programmers, and writers who lend insight and memories of Poland's greatest modern composer. This podcast is part of Penderecki in Memoriam Worldwide project, honoring the life and legacy of the great composer. Thank you to project partners Dukes, Naxos, Ludwig van Beethoven Association, and Schott EAM for sharing Krzysztof Penderecki's music with the world. We appreciate you joining us in celebrating Penderecki's life and legacy. Director and conductor for the orchestra of the royal capital city of Krakow, the Symphonia Cracovia, Jurek Dybał is also an acclaimed conductor and musician with the world-famous Vienna Philharmonic. Maestro Dybał has also made appearances with the Polish National Radio Symphony, Polish Radio Orchestra, Beethoven Orchester Bonn, the Czech National Symphony, and Sinfonia Varsovia, to name only a few of the great orchestras he has worked with. As a conductor, he's collaborated with Gidon Kremer, Katia and Marielle Labèque, Cameron Carpenter, Erwin Schrott, singers of the Vienna State Opera, among many others, and his recordings can be found on labels such as Sony Classical and Warner Classics. An award-winning musician, Maestro Dybał is also founder and director of the Krzysztof Penderecki International Music Festival and has premiered a number of the great composer's works. Jurek Dybał is here with us to discuss Krzysztof Penderecki. Hi Jurek, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Hello, I'm really happy to hear you there.
Jurek, when and how did you come to first meet Penderecki?
My first encounter with Master Penderecki was actually as an orchestra musician with Sinfonia Varsovia in Poland. During my study, I was playing double bass in the orchestra as an extra player freelancing during my studies. I think first concert, we had Agnus Dei, which was arranged for string orchestra by Boris Pergameshikov, and I was completely spellbounded by his music and Maestro conducting himself. The next concert, it was already second day, it was on a kind of concert tour, was Credo, conducted by Maestro himself in a church in Tarchomin in Warsaw. Spellbounded and encounter with a living composer conducting his own piece, which in his music was speaking directly to me what I thought. And of course, Penderecki was a well-known person as a composer and personality for me as being a student of music academy. But this encounter, I can say, changed my life. And as an artist and being Polish, I was especially proud and touched by this great master.
Throughout the years, Penderecki had a long association with the Symphonia Cracovia under your direction, and the orchestra collaborated on one of the last projects he worked on before his passing in early 2020, the Sony Classical recording which contains 3 of his 4 sinfonietas. This recording was made at the Krzysztof Penderecki European Center for Music
Yes, that's a very special place on the cultural map of Poland, Lusławice, European Krzysztof Penderecki Center of Music, where people from all the world meet, and the students with professors and professional orchestras to pay a tribute to Maestro's music and his legacy. And we have done it very often with Sinfonietta Cracovia, the orchestra so close to Maestro's heart. The orchestra was founded almost 30 years ago and actually was our godmother of the orchestra was Madame Elżbieta Penderecki, and with her support the orchestra was established as a city orchestra, the official orchestra of the city of Krakow, and then was very close tied with Krzysztof Penderecki, performing his music and performing with him as a conductor. I was quite honored and lucky to work with the orchestra for 8 years and to work with Krzysztof Penderecki on his music while he was sitting in the audience, while he was visiting our rehearsals, giving us advices how to perform his music. We discussed the performances afterwards. I was sometimes sitting in the audience listening to my orchestra playing his music, and he was giving me the comments to this performance right on the spot. Especially dear repertoire to our hearts were 3 sinfoniettas. 2 of them were played before quite often. The orchestra, when I came to the ensemble, I took on the workshop, let's say, the 3rd Sinfonietta, Leaves from an Unwritten Diary. It's a very sentimental journey to Maestro's childhood. Musical recollections of his past with the famous Oriental melody, maybe Armenian, maybe Hutzul's, maybe Jewish, which he put at the end of the Sinfonietta. And this tune was actually played by his father, who was playing violin just to relax for himself after work. And he usually started warming up with this tune. So after this beautiful and very profound music, being a little bit avant-garde and a little bit neo-romantic, at the end of the piece is coming this Oriental tune, and the piece ends with sound of beating heart, which interrupts suddenly. It's very meaningful. It was the first piece I ever conducted of Penderecki with the orchestra I first founded during my studies in Warsaw. Then I did it with Bayerische Kammerorchester, and then very often with Sinfonietta Cracovia and Sinfonia Varsovia. And the Agnus Dei was a piece which was written for the funeral of Cardinal Wyszyński, and it was a very special moment in Polish history, especially now playing this piece as a tribute to, an homage to Maestro. It has a very special meaning, and we tried to put it on this recording for Sony Classical with title Penderecki's Sinfoniettas. It's supposed to be double meaning. You know, the orchestra's name came after Maestro's beautiful works for string orchestra, number 1, Sinfonietta per archi. And on the recording you can find Sinfonietta per archi, you can find a Sinfonietta number 2 with an amazing clarinet player, the leader of clarinet section of Vienna Philharmonic, Daniel Ottensama. When we started the CD also with actually musical joke of Krzysztof Penderecki, the 3 pieces in an old style. was to shut the mouth of some critics who say when he was writing avant-garde music that he cannot write proper tune, some uneducated critics of music. So he wrote beautiful aria, one could say, in Handel style, and also 2 minuets, which were used in very important film in Polish cinematography. Wojciech has the manuscript found in Zaragoza. So this is very special, and it shows our connection as an orchestra and myself as a conductor to Maestro. Of course, we recorded before also Concertino per tromba ad orchestra with Gabor Boldocki. The recording got an International Classical Music Award. Concertino per tromba ad orchestra was premiered by Sinfonietta. We had a Polish premiere in a series of world premiere recordings. So Sinfonietta was one of commissioning partner, and we played it in the festival, which I'm honored to run in the city of Zabrze in a post-industrial base in an old coal mine, Krzysztof Penderecki International Festival.
Beginning in the mid-1970s, Penderecki renounced his radicalism to some extent, and although his language remained quite contemporary, it also became more traditional. This is certainly the case with the Concertino. The piece was written in 2015, and up until that time, trumpet had not played a significant role in Penderecki's body of work. He wrote substantial bass trumpet solos in his 7th and 8th symphonies to represent the voice of God, but it took him 20 concertos before he finally created one for the trumpet.
It plays a completely different role, as you mentioned, the voice of God in bass trumpet in the symphonies and the 7 Gates of Jerusalem. And it's more like entertaining, as you said, but still the concerto is very compact. And of course, it's not as avant-garde as 1970s Maestro's music. I think my concept of his development is that he was actually always avant-garde. He was an avant-garde arrebour, you can say. So, when everybody's stuck in writing avant-garde music in orthodox sense, he was going farther, but not leaving the avant-garde. So he was using all the effects and what he achieved on this path to make a complex and beautiful music. The concertino is not long, but it's very compact. And it has a very nice statement. And why it took so long to write a trumpet concerto? I think just because Maestro Penderecki met Gabor Boldocki, the great trumpet player and beautiful guy who is very dedicated to his instrument. He was asking Maestro to write a concerto for his instrument. It was really hard because I remember all these instrumentalists coming to Maestro and saying, could you write a piece for my instrument? And I was one of them, asked for concerto for double bass, for example, Xavier de Maistre for harp. I think it was very important the artist for whom Maestro wrote his concerti, like writing for Anne-Sophie Mutter or for Arto Noras. So the concerti were dedicated actually to the artist and to the interpreter and in a second part, in my opinion, to the instrument they were playing. So for him, it was important, the dedication to music and to their instrument. And I think this combination with Gabor Woldotsky and Penderecki's music was just perfect. Sometimes we combined it in the concerts with Haydn concerto. And not everybody knows about this fact. The maestro wrote 2 cadenzas to Haydn concerto, trumpet concerto. They are not very often played, but we did it a few times with Gabor Woldotsky. They're entertaining.
The Hungarian trumpet virtuoso brought Penderecki 5 different types of trumpets to demonstrate the variety of the instrument's different color possibilities. Penderecki chose 2 for the concertino, the standard trumpet in C major and the deeper, smoother sounding flugelhorn.
Exactly, and the flugelhorn has a beautiful, warm and dark sound. Maestro Penderecki also loved the viola in all his pieces. Viola, even as a section or as a solo instrument, we know the concerto for viola, this kind of dark, smooth sound. And I think there's a lot of similarities between beautiful viola sound and a flugelhorn, which Woldotsky masters, I think, even better than the trumpet. It's the perfect combination.
And he cast the trumpeter as sort of an actor who was featured prominently alongside a group of percussion instruments.
At the very beginning, Maestro Penderecki used one of his favorite art of interpretation, that he puts the trumpet actually off stage. And after the first entrance, trumpet is coming closer, playing second part, and actually third entrance, he's standing in front of the conductors. The solo concerto starts without the soloist, which is, of course, very theatralic, and for the idea of a sound coming from da lontano, so coming from far away and coming closer to the audience, especially when the audience is waiting at the strong, maybe even brutal sound of the opening quarter. The trumpet beginning. Actually very clever, I must say, by Maestro Penderecki. And of course, it was not easy to produce this effect on the CD. So we were working in Lusławice again. This recording was also recorded there to find the proper space to do this effect in an acoustic way, not to ask engineers to make this effect on the computer.
To an audience member, it must have seemed like the trumpet soloist was almost involved in a piece of performance art or was sort of an actor.
Exactly. In the scherzo, the bass clarinet is almost taking over from the trumpet, which is also very interesting for the trumpet concerto.
Okay, let's move to Penderecki's satirical opera Ubu Rex. Based on Alfred Jarry's 1896 play, Ubu Roy, the piece uses models reminiscent of Offenbach, Rossini, Shostakovich, and Schnittke. Premiered by the Bavarian State Opera in 1991 for the opening of the Munich Opera Festival, I read that in true Penderecki fashion, he delivered the score very close to the time of the premiere.
Yes, maybe a little bit exaggerating, because it wouldn't be possible to play this piece without the proper preparation, because the score, it's very entertaining, but it's a very difficult part of the orchestral piece with a huge band up, which consists of almost 30 brass players. The opera buffa is that orgastic piece, and to put it all together is not that easy. I was honored to do the premiere in the Silesian opera of Uburex, so I know what I'm talking about. In this case, really difficult opera to put together. However, it's very easy to listen to and to enjoy because it's a really comedy and very actual in the thematic to what Jari wrote and Penderecki put on his score. And of course, it was a little bit, maybe not a scandal in Munich, because as Penderecki being himself, he wrote the opera, which is a little bit satirical to the history of music. And the beginning, you mentioned already a lot of composers you can find there in some quotations.
Yes, and of course, Maestro was very interested for a long time in writing this type of opera buffa in this sort of surrealistic play, sort of a parody of a Shakespeare tragedy, combining these subjects of bloody power struggles with absurdist elements. But of course, he recognized that satirizing power and the greed in society was not terribly welcome in a very restricted political environment.
Yes, definitely true. And I think even nowadays, it is sometimes quite hard to put this opera on stage because, a lot of opera directors are afraid of this, especially in times of undemocratic movements. It is very important piece, not only for music, but for literature and for theater. People in our premiere, they were laughing, they're having fun, and they haven't noticed that the 2.5 hours just went by.
Maestro wrote, to write a comic opera, one has to not only have experienced a lot, but also be able to look at these experiences with perspective. To laugh at oneself is something that cannot be done at the age of 30.
That is so true. And in the stage performance in the Silesian opera, the director put the mirrors all over the stage. And actually the idea was that we could find ourselves in the mirror. So even in the program booklet, you had to read the letters upside down. And on the page on the left side, you can find a small mirror to let you understand that actually you can find yourself and all the characteristics in what's going on stage and the roles.
Maestro Dybał, in closing, more than anything, what did you learn from Penderecki and what is your recollection on the occasion of his passing in 2020?
It's hard to say because it was like the world ended for us musicians, for people being close to him. We used to say we're like a Penderecki family. Of course, we're so close with Maestro's music. We're so close with Madame Penderecki. We're playing together, performing music. And for us, it was so obvious that he was among us. And actually, when he passed, we all realized, thank you so much, how important he was, not only as being one of the greatest composers of all times, definitely the greatest Polish composers ever and more complex, but just who he was for our mental life, for our being human. I felt like I lost a father.
Maestro Jurek Dybał, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast to discuss the great Polish composer, Krzysztof Penderecki.
Thank you so much.
This This is Max Horowitz, producer and host of Penderecki in Memoriam Podcast, created by Anna Pejanowska and presented by Polish Cultural Institute, New York. Thank you to project partners Dukes, Naxos, Ludwig van Beethoven Association, and Schott EAM for sharing Krzysztof Penderecki's music with the world. We appreciate you joining us in honoring and celebrating Penderecki's life and legacy. Make sure to subscribe.